There's a photograph in my drawer. Me in my uniform, 1950, fresh out of basic training. Smiling. Young. 19 years old and full of certainty about who I was and what the world meant. I look at that photograph sometimes and don't recognize the person staring back. That boy is a stranger to me now. He died in Korea. What came home in his place was something else entirely. Thomas Brennan. That was my name then. Still is, technically. But names don't mean much when the person wearing them has fundamentally changed. When you've become someone your younger self wouldn't recognize or understand. I grew up in upstate New York, small farming community. My father worked the land, his father before him. The expectation was I'd do the same, take over the farm, marry a local girl, raise kids who'd take over after me. Simple, predictable, safe. Then North Korea invaded the South in June 1950. President Truman sent troops. The draft notices started going out by summer. Mine came in August. My father said I should claim farm deferment. Agricultural work was essential. But something in me wanted to go, wanted to see the world beyond our small town, wanted to prove myself, wanted to be part of something bigger than planting and harvesting. Young men are idiots. We think war is an adventure, a test, a chance to become heroes. Nobody tells you that the test never ends, that you don't become a hero, you become a survivor, and survival has its own costs. Basic training at Fort Dix. They taught us to shoot, march, follow orders, made us into soldiers in 8 weeks, told us we were the best army in the world, that we'd push the North Koreans back to China in no time. Made it sound easy, made it sound like we'd be home by Christmas. I shipped out in November 1950. My mother cried at the station. My father shook my hand and told me to keep my head down. My younger sister Mary gave me a picture of the family to keep in my pocket, said it would bring me luck. I carried that picture through the whole war, kept it close to my heart, thought it would keep me safe. It didn't. Nothing could keep me safe from what Korea would do to me. Not luck, not prayers, not the innocence I carried with me onto that transport ship. I was Thomas Brennan when I left, 19 years old, whole, certain about right and wrong, about who I was, about what mattered. I don't know who came back, but it wasn't him. I landed in Korea in late November 1950. The cold hit me first, nothing like New York winters. This was a different kind of cold, bone deep, vicious, the kind that made your teeth ache and your joints seize up. They assigned me to the 7th Infantry Division. We were pushing north toward the Yalu River, the border with China. The North Korean army was collapsing. Victory seemed inevitable. The officers talked about being home by New Year's. We were cocky, arrogant. We'd beaten the Germans and Japanese just 5 years earlier. These North Koreans were nothing compared to that. Or so we thought. My platoon was a mix of veterans and green troops like me. The veterans were quiet, didn't talk much about what they'd seen in the Pacific or Europe. Just did their jobs with a grim efficiency that should have warned us about what was coming. Sergeant Kowalski was our platoon sergeant. He'd fought at Okinawa, seen some of the worst combat of World War II. I asked him once what it was like. He just looked at me with these dead eyes and said, "You'll find out soon enough, kid." I did. Sooner than I expected. We were in positions north of the Chosin Reservoir when the Chinese attacked, November 27th, 1950. I'd been in Korea less than a week. They came at night, thousands of them, tens of thousands. We didn't even know they were in Korea. Chinese soldiers in quilted uniforms, blowing bugles and whistles pouring down from the hills like a human wave. The first attack hit our positions around midnight. I was on guard duty, half frozen in a foxhole, when I heard the bugles. Thought it was some kind of joke at first. Who uses bugles in modern warfare? Then I saw them. Shadows moving in the darkness. hundreds of shadows, coming straight at us. Someone started firing. Then everyone was firing, tracers lighting up the night. The sound was incredible. Rifles, machine guns, grenades, our artillery starting up behind us, and over it all, those bugles and the screaming. Chinese soldiers screaming as they charged. They hit our line like a wave, hand-to-hand fighting in the darkness. I fired my M1 Garand until it was empty, reloaded, fired again. A Chinese soldier came over the edge of my foxhole. We grappled. I got my bayonet into him, felt it go in, felt him die. First man I ever killed. Couldn't even see his face in the darkness. Just a weight that went limp and fell on top of me. I pushed him off and kept fighting because that's all there was, fighting or dying. The attack lasted hours. They'd come in waves, get pushed back, regroup, come again. Our position was getting overrun. Men were dying all around me. Private Collins took a grenade, just disintegrated. Martinez got bayoneted during close combat. I heard him screaming for his mother. Kowalski was everywhere, shouting orders, directing fire, keeping us together. Hold this line. Don't give them an inch. His voice was the only constant in the chaos. By dawn, they'd pulled back. We'd held, barely. I looked around at what was left of my platoon. We'd started the night with 42 men. 23 were still standing. The rest were dead or wounded. I sat in my foxhole as the sun came up and looked at my hands. They were covered in blood. Chinese blood. American blood. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. It was all just red. That's when I started changing. Started becoming something other than the farm boy from New York. Started becoming a killer. Because that's what war does. It takes boys and turns them into killers or corpses, and there's no third option. Kowalski came by to check on me. Saw me staring at my hands. First one's always the hardest, he said. Gets easier after that. He was wrong. It didn't get easier. It got harder. Because each kill took a piece of who you were. Each death you caused carved away at your soul until there was nothing left but the hollow shell that knew how to survive. We spent the next 2 weeks fighting our way out of the Chinese encirclement. Running battle through frozen mountains. Men dying from combat and cold in equal measure. I killed Chinese soldiers. Don't know how many. Stopped counting after the first day. Stopped thinking of them as people. Had to. They were just targets, threats, things to be eliminated so I could survive. Dehumanize or die. That was the choice. So I dehumanized. Them and myself. By the time we reached safety, I'd been in Korea 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Already I was different. Already that boy in the photograph was gone. Already I knew I'd never be the same again. And the war had barely started. The winter of 1950 to 51 was the coldest in Korean history. 40 below zero, 50 below with wind chill, cold that killed as efficiently as bullets. We retreated south, fighting delaying actions against the Chinese advance. Every day was the same nightmare. March until exhausted, dig in, get attacked, fight them off or fall back, march again, repeat. Men died from frostbite, lost fingers, toes, entire limbs to the cold. I saw a soldier take off his boots one night. His toes just stayed in the boots, frozen and dead. He looked at them like they belonged to someone else. Maybe they did by then. We stopped seeing the enemy as human, stopped seeing ourselves as human too. We were just survival machines, doing whatever it took to make it through one more day, one more hour, one more minute. I did things in Korea I can't talk about. Things that made sense in the moment, in the desperate calculus of survival. But that haunt me now. Things that transformed me from a person into something else. There was a village, February 1951. We'd been taking fire from it for days. Snipers, ambushes. Command said it was harboring enemy soldiers, said we needed to clear it. We went in hard, room to room, building to building. Shot anything that moved because movement meant threat and threat meant death. Found weapons. found Chinese soldiers in civilian clothes, but also found families, old people, children. I shot a man in that village. He was reaching for something. Could have been a weapon. Could have been trying to surrender. I didn't wait to find out. Just pulled the trigger. He fell. It was a woman's photograph he'd been reaching for. His wife, maybe. His sister. I don't know. We left the village burning. 47 enemy combatants eliminated, the report said. Successful operation. Nobody mentioned the civilians. Nobody asked questions about the bodies we left behind. That night, I tried to sleep and kept seeing that photograph. Kept wondering who she was, if she was waiting for him somewhere, if she'd ever know what happened. Kowalski found me sitting in the snow. You did what you had to do, he said. Him or you. That's the only choice in war. Maybe he was right. Maybe there was no other choice. But knowing that didn't make it easier. Didn't wash away the memory. Didn't bring back the person I'd been before I pulled that trigger. The war became static by spring. Trench warfare. We'd take Hill 351, lose it, take it back. Same with Hill 717, Hill 983. Numbers on a map that we bled for over and over. Dozens of men dying for a few hundred yards of frozen mud. I watched friends die. Collins on that first night. Martinez. Peterson got hit by artillery. Nothing left to bury. Williams took a sniper round through the head while lighting a cigarette. Hayes died from infected wounds 3 days after getting hit. Each death carved away more of who I'd been. Each loss made me harder, colder. I stopped learning new guys' names, stopped making friends. What was the point? They'd just die anyway. Kowalski died in May. Mortar round hit his position. Direct hit. He'd survived Okinawa and a year in Korea, only to die on some nameless hill fighting for ground we'd give up a week later. They made me sergeant after that, gave me his squad, his job, his responsibility for keeping boys alive who wanted to go home. I was 20 years old, and I'd stopped believing any of us would make it home. Not really, not whole. The killing became routine, mechanical. I was good at it. That's what scared me most. How good I became at killing. How easy it got. How little I felt when I pulled the trigger. We took prisoners sometimes. Chinese and North Korean soldiers, young kids mostly. Terrified, beaten, half-starved. They'd look at me with these hopeless eyes, and I'd wonder what they saw. Did they see a soldier doing his duty? Or did they see what I'd become? A killer who'd forgotten how to be anything else. I got wounded in July, shrapnel in my leg and shoulder. Not bad enough to evacuate. Just enough to get me a few days at a field hospital. They patched me up and sent me back to my unit. I almost wished it had been worse. Wished for a wound serious enough to get me sent home. Hated myself for wishing it. Hated myself for being relieved when other men got hit instead of me. Hated myself for surviving when better men died. The farm boy from New York was completely gone by then, buried under layers of violence and trauma and moral compromise. What remained was a thing that knew how to fight and kill and survive. Nothing more. I got a letter from Mary in August. Talked about the harvest. About how Dad's back was bothering him. About a boy she was sweet on. Normal life continuing back home without me. She ended with, "We can't wait for you to come home. We miss you so much." I read that letter and knew the truth. The person they missed was dead, gone. The thing that would eventually come home wearing Thomas Brennan's face wasn't their son, wasn't Mary's brother. It was a stranger, a killer, a broken thing that had forgotten how to be human. I never wrote back. What would I say? That's when I stopped caring about the reason, stopped thinking about why we were there or what we were fighting for, just focused on keeping myself and my men alive for one more day. That was the only goal that made sense. I was a good sergeant. That's what my lieutenant said. Kept my men sharp, kept casualties low, got the job done. What he didn't know, what I never told anyone, was that I'd become empty inside. A machine that processed tactical problems. Felt nothing. Cared about nothing except survival. New replacements kept arriving. 18, 19 years old, fresh-faced, scared but trying to hide it. They'd look at me, 21 but feeling ancient, and ask for advice, ask how to survive. I'd tell them the truth. Don't think, don't feel, don't make friends. Just do your job, and maybe you'll live through this. They'd look shocked, disappointed, like I'd failed some test of leadership. They wanted inspiration, wanted someone to tell them they were fighting for something meaningful, that their sacrifice mattered. I couldn't give them that. Couldn't lie like that anymore. Could only give them the tools to survive in a war that would change them the way it had changed me. Some listened, some didn't. The ones who didn't usually died first. The idealists. The ones who still believed in honor and glory and righteous causes. War ate them quickly. The ones who survived were the ones who became like me. Hard. Empty. Focused only on the next moment. They'd stop writing home. Stop talking about the future. Stop being human in any meaningful way. I watched them transform, watched the light go out in their eyes, felt guilty about it, but not guilty enough to lie to them. Better they become monsters and survive than stay human and die. The routine became almost comfortable in its horror. Patrols into no man's land, ambushes, counterattacks, artillery barrages that shook the earth. The constant low-level fear that was now so familiar it felt normal. I killed more men. How many? I don't know. Lost count. Stopped thinking of them as men anyway. Just targets, threats, problems to be solved with bullets. There was one that stuck with me, though. A Chinese soldier, probably younger than me. We caught him on patrol, wounded, couldn't fight back. He looked up at me with these eyes full of terror. Said something in Chinese I couldn't understand. Standard procedure was to take prisoners for intelligence. But we were on a deep patrol, couldn't bring him back, couldn't leave him alive to warn his unit. My lieutenant looked at me. Didn't say anything, didn't have to. I shot him, execution style. He was kneeling, begging, and I shot him in the head. Felt nothing. Did what needed to be done, what the situation required. But that night, I kept hearing his voice, kept seeing his face. Not because I regretted it. I was too far gone for regret. But because somewhere deep inside, some last fragment of the person I'd been was screaming at what I'd become. I ignored it, had to, couldn't afford to be human. Humanity was a liability in war. Compassion got you killed. Morality was a luxury for people who weren't fighting for their lives every day. The seasons changed. Summer to fall to winter again. My second Korean winter. It wasn't as cold as the first, or maybe I was just more numb. Harder to tell the difference between external cold and internal emptiness. I got promoted to staff sergeant in December 1951. More responsibility, more men depending on me, more lives I was responsible for saving or getting killed. The weight should have been crushing. Instead, I felt nothing. Just accepted it and kept going. Got another letter from home. Dad was sick. Nothing serious, but Mary was worried. She asked when I was coming home, said they needed me, said the farm needed me. I stared at that letter for a long time. Tried to imagine going home, working the farm, being part of a family again, living a normal life. Couldn't picture it. That life belonged to someone else, to the boy in the photograph, to Thomas Brennan, who'd left New York in November 1950. That person was dead. What would happen when this thing wearing his name went home? When the killer met his family and they expected him to be their son, their brother, their Tommy. When they realized the person they loved was gone forever. I didn't write back to that letter either. Better they think I was just busy. Better they keep hoping for someone who didn't exist anymore than face the reality of what I'd become. The war ground on. More patrols, more firefights, more men dead, more hills taken and lost and taken again. More killing, always more killing. I was good at it by then. Very good, efficient, professional. Everything a soldier should be, and nothing a human being should become. By spring of 1952, I'd been in Korea 18 months. Felt like 18 years. Felt like forever. I'd stopped thinking about before the war. Stopped planning for after. There was only now. Only survival. Only the next mission. They told me I'd be rotating out soon. Going home. Back to the world. Back to family and farms and normal life. The thought terrified me more than any combat ever had. I left Korea in June 1952, 19 months in combat. Survived when so many didn't. Got on a transport ship heading back to the States and felt nothing. No relief, no joy, just emptiness. The other soldiers on the ship were celebrating, heading home, back to their lives. They talked about what they'd do, see their families, eat real food, sleep in real beds, normal things. I stood at the rail and looked back at Korea disappearing in the distance. Part of me wanted to stay. At least there I understood the rules. Kill or be killed. Simple, clear. The world back home had rules I'd forgotten. Expected me to be someone I wasn't anymore. We landed in California. They processed us out. Gave us our discharge papers and mustering out pay. Thanked us for our service. Sent us back to our lives like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't changed. Like we were the same boys who'd left. I took a train across the country. Sat by the window and watched America pass by. Clean, peaceful, prosperous. People going about their normal lives. They had no idea. Couldn't imagine what we'd seen, what we'd done, what we'd become. A woman got on the train in Chicago, sat across from me, saw my uniform. "Thank you for your service," she said, smiling. "We're so proud of our boys." I nodded. Couldn't speak. Because what could I say? That I'd killed men who were probably just like me? That I'd executed a wounded prisoner? That I'd become something that didn't deserve pride or gratitude? She kept talking. Asked where I'd served. If I'd seen action. If I was glad to be home. "Yes, ma'am," I said, to all of it. Because that's what she wanted to hear. Because the truth would have destroyed her image of the hero soldier returning home. I got off at my stop. My family was there. Mom, Dad, Mary. They ran to me. Mom crying. Dad shaking my hand. Mary hugging me. They looked older, smaller. Or maybe I'd just gotten bigger, harder. Changed in ways that made them seem like strangers. "Tommy, you're home. You're finally home," Mom kept saying through tears. But I wasn't. Wasn't home. Wasn't Tommy. Wasn't anything they recognized or understood. I was a ghost wearing their son's face. A killer in their boy's body. The first week was the worst. They wanted to hear stories. Wanted to know what it was like. What I'd done. If I'd been scared. If I was okay. I lied. Told them sanitized versions. Talked about the cold and the boredom and the food. Left out the killing and the dying and the transformation. Gave them a hero story because that's what they needed. But I couldn't sleep. The nightmares came every night. I'd wake up screaming, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there, back in Korea fighting for my life. Mom would come in, worried, asking if I was all right. "Just dreams," I'd say. But they weren't dreams. They were memories. Real things that had happened. Real men I'd killed. Real horror I'd lived through and couldn't escape. I couldn't be around people. Crowds made me panic. Loud noises made me hit the ground. I'd scan every room for exits and threats. Couldn't relax, couldn't let my guard down. Was always waiting for the attack that never came. Dad wanted me back on the farm. Said the work would be good for me. Would help me readjust. Would give me purpose. I tried. God, I tried. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't focus on planting and harvesting when all I could think about was Korea. Couldn't care about crops when I'd watched men die for meaningless hills. The problem seemed so small, so pointless. Mary introduced me to her fiancé. Nice guy, local boy. They were getting married in the fall. She was happy, excited, planning her future. I looked at them and felt nothing. Couldn't be happy for her. Couldn't feel anything. The capacity for joy had been carved out of me somewhere in Korea. I started drinking. Not socially. Alone. In my room. Anything to quiet the memories. Anything to make the faces stop appearing. Anything to feel something other than the emptiness. Mom found me one night. Drunk. Crying. Couldn't stop crying once I started. All the tears I hadn't shed in Korea coming out at once. "What happened to you over there?" she asked, holding me like I was a child again. I wanted to tell her, wanted to explain what I'd become, but the words wouldn't come. How do you tell your mother you're a killer, that her son died in Korea and a monster came back in his place? I'm fine, I lied. Just need time. But time didn't help. Weeks became months and I wasn't getting better, was getting worse. The anger was building, rage at nothing and everything, at the world for continuing like nothing had happened, at my family for expecting me to be someone I wasn't, at myself for surviving when better men died. I got into a fight at a bar in September. Some guy said something. Don't even remember what. I snapped. Put him in the hospital. Broke his jaw. Fractured his ribs. Couldn't stop hitting him until someone pulled me off. They didn't press charges. He's a vet, they said. He's been through a lot. Like that excused it. Like being in Korea gave me the right to nearly kill someone over words. But it made me realize the truth. I was dangerous. Not fit to be around people. Not fit for normal life. The thing I'd become in Korea, the killer, the machine, that's what I was now. That's all I was. I left home in October. Couldn't stay anymore. Couldn't keep pretending to be their son. Couldn't keep disappointing them with my failure to be normal. Moved to the city, got a job in a factory, night shift, kept to myself, lived alone, didn't make friends, didn't date, just existed, day after day, year after year. My family tried to stay in touch. Letters, phone calls, invitations to visit. I made excuses, said I was busy, said I'd come soon, never did. Better they remember me as I was before. Better they think their Tommy was just busy or shy or struggling to adjust. Better than them knowing the truth, that he was dead, that he'd died in Korea, that I'd killed him along with all those other men. I'm 73 years old now. It's been 54 years since I came home from Korea. More than half a century. A lifetime for most people. For me, it's all been one long day. One endless moment of being stuck between who I was and what I became. Between the farm boy and the killer. Between Korea and home. Never fully in either place. I never married, never had kids, never went back to the farm. Built a life of sorts, worked factory jobs, paid my bills, existed. But I never really lived, not after Korea, just went through the motions of being alive while feeling dead inside. The nightmares never stopped. 73 years old and I still wake up screaming. Still see the faces of the men I killed. Still hear the bugles and the screaming. Still feel the weight of that first Chinese soldier falling on top of me in the darkness. Still see that photograph in the dead man's hand. Still wonder who she was, if she's still alive somewhere. If she spent her life waiting for a man who died in a burning village in February 1951. My family tried for years to reconnect. Dad died in 1978. Didn't see him before the end. Couldn't face him. Couldn't stand the disappointment in his eyes when he looked at what his son had become. Mom lasted until 1992. Mary called to tell me she was dying, begged me to come see her. Said Mom asked for me every day. Wanted to see her Tommy one more time. I went, sat by her hospital bed. She was small, fragile, barely conscious from the medication. But when she saw me, she smiled, reached for my hand. "Tommy," she whispered, "my boy, you came home." I held her hand and lied one more time. "Yeah, Mom, I came home." She died believing it, believing her son had returned from Korea, never knowing that he'd died there, that the man holding her hand was a stranger wearing her boy's face. Mary's still alive. We talk occasionally. She's got grandkids now, great-grandkids, a whole family, a full life. She asks me sometimes about Korea, about what happened, about why I never came back to the farm. I tell her the same lies I've told for 50 years, that I needed to make my own way, that I couldn't settle back into small-town life, that I'm fine, always fine. She doesn't believe me. I can hear it in her voice, but she doesn't push. Maybe she doesn't want to know the truth. Maybe she prefers the comfortable lie to the ugly reality. I look at that photograph sometimes, the one from 1950, that boy in the uniform, smiling, full of certainty. I hate him for his innocence, for his ignorance, for not knowing what was coming. But I also envy him. He still had a soul, still had humanity, still had the capacity to feel and love and be a real person. Korea took that, took everything that made him human and replaced it with a machine designed to kill and survive. The Korean War is called the Forgotten War. Most people don't know much about it. It's just a footnote between World War II and Vietnam. 3 years of fighting that changed nothing, ended right back where it started. All those deaths for a stalemate. Maybe it's better that way. Better forgotten than remembered. Better that people don't know what we did there, what we became there, what we brought home with us. I meet other Korean War vets sometimes, at VA hospitals, at the rare memorial event. We don't talk much about the war, don't need to. We recognize each other, see the same emptiness in each other's eyes, the same damage, the same fundamental brokenness. We're a dying breed now. Most of us are in our 70s and 80s. Won't be many of us left soon. And when we're gone, who'll remember? Who'll know what that war really was? What it cost us? They'll read the histories, the casualty figures, the strategic analyses. But they won't know the real cost. Won't know about the boys who died not from bullets, but from becoming something they couldn't live with. Won't know about the lives that ended even though the bodies kept walking around for decades. I should have died in Korea. Should have been killed in that first attack at Chosin. Would have been better for everyone. My family wouldn't have spent 50 years wondering what happened to their son. I wouldn't have spent 50 years carrying the weight of what I became. But I survived. And survival meant living with the memories, living with the knowledge of what I'd done, living with the ghost of the person I'd killed. Not the enemy soldiers, but the boy from New York who thought war was an adventure. There's a VA counselor who keeps encouraging me to talk about my experiences, says it'll help, says I need to process the trauma. She uses words like PTSD and moral injury and survivor's guilt, but she doesn't understand. This isn't trauma to be processed. This is transformation. You can't process your way back to being someone you're not anymore. Can't talk yourself back into being human when you fundamentally changed into something else. I returned home changed forever. That's what this interview is about. That's what people want to understand. But they can't. Not really. Because you can't understand transformation without experiencing it. Can't understand becoming a monster without being turned into one. The boy in that photograph, Thomas Brennan, age 19, full of life and certainty, he died in Korea. Died in the cold. Died in the killing. Died somewhere between the first Chinese soldier and the 1,000th, between the first lie to his family and the last. What came home was something else, something that looked like him and spoke like him and answered to his name, but wasn't him, would never be him again. I've spent 54 years wearing his face, living his life, pretending to be him while knowing the truth, that he's gone, that I killed him as surely as I killed all those other men, that every day I pretend to be Thomas Brennan is a lie. The war ended in 1953. The armistice was signed. The fighting stopped. The soldiers came home. But we never really came home. We're still there, still in those frozen hills, still killing and dying and transforming into things that can't exist in the normal world. They say we returned home changed forever. They're right. But they don't understand what that means. Don't understand that change isn't adjustment or growth. It's destruction. It's becoming someone else entirely. Someone who can't love or feel or be fully human. I returned home changed forever, and I've spent every day since then wishing I'd never come home at all. There's a photograph in my drawer. A boy in uniform, smiling, young, innocent. He's dead now. Has been for 54 years. I should know. I'm the one who killed him.